I actually want to talk about why I decided to paddle. There we go. The entire length of the Charles with Caleb and Caroline. And maybe it's the same one that George Mallory gave, because it's there. And the new data is there. A big chunk of these boundaries are defined by the Charles River. So it's a big part of Newton. But the main reason was sort of the parent-child reasons, right? I enjoy kayaking. I want the kids to enjoy kayaking. So I had some credit already. I also went out about this big double red kayak. I'm going to bring it in today, but I figured I could get it here. Coming downhill, I'm not sure if it'll get back up. It's got a little jump seat, so Caroline can squeeze in as well too. Did you just Superman costume? Yes. Supergirl. I'm sorry. And I think a half day spent paddling is a great way to spend time with the kids, away from streams. Although they're loving down the streams. But you can see the bag. There's a bag of snacks and Caleb and I think oftentimes the kids will start going to snacks from me and what we can see on the river. But I think overall they enjoyed it. Did you overall enjoy it? Yeah. Okay. I thought it'd be an adventure. It's not like trying to find the source of the Congo, but the Charles is mostly hidden from view. This sort of veneer of dream out there. Everybody's familiar with the Charles River Basin down by Storrow Drive. And I'm sure everybody's familiar down here with the lake section here in Auburndale. And probably most of you have paddled in some section of there. And maybe a bunch of you have paddled all the way up to Lower Falls up past the golf course. But then, where does it go? And that's the big question I get from people. It was not why, it was where. Where does the Charles River go? Where does it start? And for our adventure, there are two answers. This is where the Charles River actually starts, and then further downstream we actually start paddling in it. So the official start is Echo Lake up in Auburndale. There's several streams that flow into the lake, but none of them seem to have been deemed worthy to have the name of the Charles River on them. It looks like a great place to paddle, but it's part of the Milford water drinking supply, so no boats on it. And this is actually one of the big problems for the upper parts of the Charles River is Milford draws a huge amount of water out of the water to use in town. So up in the early starts of the Charles River, we could barely get our shoes wet, never mind sort of get a boat in that. When Caleb and I hiked up there this fall to try to get the last little stretch in, and that's most of what we saw that far up there. We found a little bit more, a little bit farther down, at another impoundment at Wildcat Pond, still out in Milford. Again, still part of the drinking water supply. But it too doesn't need a whole lot of water to go downstream. But we kept chasing it, and the next thing we found was Milford Pond, although it was really much more of just a swamp that's backed up by a dam than a lake. It was really this toxic-looking yellow just downstream from the dam. And on top of that, a little veneer sheen of petroleum to go along with it. Fortunately, it wasn't big enough to put the boat in because I wouldn't want to have done it in that section. Yeah? No, not yet. Good. And it still didn't improve as we went farther downstream. And finally, we found a place to put in at Howard Street in Milford. Barry, my friend Barry.
Barry, stand up.
Joined us on this section. Barry got a kayak early this summer as well too, and joined us on a bunch of these lakes. There's our big red kayak and Barry's down there. At this minute, I should give credit to Ron McAdoo, who wrote this great book on the Charles River. As you can see, mine has gotten a lot of love through it.
Perhaps
in water.
Yeah, several times. Waterproof bags are great, but you need to take the book out to actually read it, and it's always that point where you hit something bad. Yeah. And then the Charles River Watershed Association also does a map. This one's a little more waterproof and stands up to it. So we lost our flag. I don't remember where we lost our flag. We'll find it.
You lost it late.
And McAdoo says in chapter 3, if you want to push the entire Charles River, you can start at Howard Street. Up here, so that's what we did. This would end up being our longest day on the Charles River, going through Mendon, Hopedale, starting Milford, Mendon, Hopedale, through Bellingham, and ending up in Medway.
Do you have the portage on any of that?
Yeah, there's lots of portages.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, this one, so actually on this one, we'll show some of the stuff we ran into. So the adventure began, at this point, the water quality was still pretty poor. It had gone from yellow, it was more like a dingy gray dishwater at this point. And it was pretty shallow. We did almost as much walking as we did paddling.
And is it industrial pollution or?
At this point, no, at this point it seems it's more just sort of agricultural runoff.
Okay.
Although the first challenge was this, which was shortly downstream Howard Street, which is the Milford Water Treatment Plant. So they take all that water out and they need to put it back in. I was sort of wondering what it was going to be like when it came out there. It was significantly cleaner coming out of the water treatment plant than it happened at that point. I'm not going to say, I shouldn't say clean, it was clearer. I'm not sure it was cleaner or not. And that got the river back up a little bit, but still sort of petered out a little bit. Actually, our biggest obstacle was this field of swamp in Oakdale. The reeds were almost too thick to paddle through. You weren't in this section, buddy. I'll tell you when you're in section. And the river bottom was too deep and too soft to walk in, and the reeds themselves weren't rooted in strong enough to sort of pull yourself along through it. It was a terrible, terrible section.
I still
Isn't that
have
what they just be like 8 hours?
Yeah, it was, I think the one benefit of it is all these reeds actually clean the water out. Downstream from here, the trails took on that familiar, much more healthier sort of brown tannin color they get from just all the leaves are broken down
I don't
biological.
like those reeds.
It took hours to get through there. The other obstacle upstream was bushes and trees. The river's very narrow up in this section.
Last picture, was this British here or something on that?
Yeah, we had to cut our sections, yes. We had a saw and lopping shears. And this is Barry starting to hack our way through some of these sections.
Wow. And we're still on the first day, right?
This is still on the first day, trying to hack through this stuff.
Well, they didn't do it in chronology, they didn't do it in...
Yeah, this is not, we did the river in different sections, over about 10 different days,
Right.
but it's sort of a random section. I think if I'd started off with this is day one, we may never have been done at that point. And that's what we couldn't figure out. I was trying to look back on whether it would be better if the water was higher, but then I think you just even deeper into the bushes is part of the problem as compared to walking. The first nice stretch was here in the Bellingham Meadows. It's sort of a wide valley that twists and turns as you go through. There's Barry up in front of it. And here's the next interesting obstacle you hit, which is this tunnel system. This is 495 up above, and the tunnels that take you through. You're not there yet, honey. We'll get you there. But this tunnel does more than let the river pass through. It's actually a flow restrictor. It's narrower on the other side. The day we went through, we actually had plenty of clearance. I'd done this section a couple of years ago and had to lean down to get through. So as the water level rises, it starts acting as a dam and pushes the water back up into Bellingham Meadows, which is a big wide valley where it could just spread out and hopefully it'll be a big flooding down the stair, down below. Of course, if the water's too high, you're not getting through. And you're not getting over, that's 495. Not related to And we found in this section, in midway by this abandoned factory, there's a sort of pond with a dam just on the other side there. And this next section had a big challenge before we could even get to the river. So here's the Medway section, industrial section.
Oh my.
Good. So here's the thing is that the river at this point comes down from the dam and goes into the factory and under the factory. I'm not sure what it does when it goes in there. I wasn't really going to try to figure it out either. But I couldn't even anyhow, because the entire factory had been chain linked off. So at this point, we couldn't even get to the river. We actually drove up and down the street for a while trying to find some way to get into it. We happened to run into the butter who was...
Yeah, we had to go up to somebody's house and ask them if we could
Go across the yard. to get into
walk
it.
through their yard.
And we finally got into it. The Medway section, this is the section full of dams.
You know what kind of factory that was, sir?
I don't. It's been abandoned for a while. Historically, yeah, I don't know that one. I've looked at history of some factories. I couldn't find anything about that one in particular. the dam. So we had, we ran into all these blockages. And more than we expected. Lots of fallen trees down there. But then we discovered the problem. See the knob marks? Beavers. We've explained beavers several times as we went through this section, because we come to the trees, we could go under some, we have to go over some, have to go around some to finally get through it. We had another natural dam. This is the West Medway Dam, although the factory that's associated with it seems to have long gone.
Are there warnings before you get to these dams and these falls?
No, this one, the only dam that had a warning is the Soak Mill Dam up at Upper Falls. This one definitely did not. You sort of learn, like, once the river starts getting wide, you know something's coming up. Because it shouldn't be wide, it should be narrow. So that's a sign that there's something up there to do it. This one you could hear the roar. There's enough of a drop, you could sort of hear the roar a little bit. We got close to it, but we knew it was coming. And again, the guides and the maps are sort of helpful to know you got something come up to stay alert to it.
There are like the portage traps marked. Are you looking for a sign?
Okay.
Some are easy to get to, some are not. This one was a relatively short portage around. It seemed like it was just sort of protected land around it. This one was sort of the opposite. This is the Sanford Mill Dam in Medway near the Franklin line. On the way, this is my father down his house, and this is an old cotton factory down there. And again, this one you can see there's no markings. And that's actually one of the bigger drops in the river, and a set of rapids down that. And that was a pretty long portage, because we needed to get out over here, walk across its parking lot, down another road, and then sort of hack our way into the river a little bit farther down.
Isn't that how one of their wheels broke on?
Yes. Yeah, the portage is long enough that the wheels of the kayak burned off at that point. We tried to go too far. Go ahead. So finally, this is Populated Pond down by Franklin and Medway, and finally the beaver dam stopped.
Well, where was that one where it was just so thick you couldn't get through?
I don't know. And this next section had a fair amount of rapids to it, not sort of churning white water, but just enough to sort of get the heart going. And Happy was paddling in this section called Caroline, so we can whack her on the head with a paddle trying to dig in and turn us. Good. Our last obstacle on this day was this forest road down in Millis. It's a low bridge. Good. Very low. Coaching in that we just sort of barely made it through on that one. No, not yet. Soon. Show Caroline. All right. So we're flying to a section of river, like I say, it's an enjoyable one to paddle. It goes along the Millis Medfield border, starting down at that point in Forest Road. What do I have to say down here?
I have to do that.
Right, so easy access point off Forest Road in Millis. There's a parking lot. But we paddled this section after heavy rains in June, so there wasn't actually much parking at that point. The parking lot was under a few feet of water. It's nice to have the no parking sign out in the middle of the river at this point. And like the Bellingham Meadows, actually go back a couple slides. One more. This is part of the Natural Valley Storage Area project. This is the Army Corps of Engineers, so we're sort of used to saying, put up big levees and industrial stuff. They took the opposite approach here for the Charles River flooding, is they make sure these valleys stay natural and open, so the water would just flood up into these areas rather than further downstream. Right there, and go back. And on this day, the water was high and wide. Normally this sort of zigzags back and forth across the meadow. We would sort of just scoot across. It actually saved us some of our usual travel time because you didn't have to go through all the different oxbows. The river crosses at this point under Route 27 with its easy access to the river, a couple of parking spots. And then the next section of the river is up here through 27 through Sherburne, Medfield, Dover, beautiful section. Both sides of the river are largely protected. You have Rocky Narrows on one side and Peters Reservation on the other side. And in this area, to the extent it's not protected land, it's the backyard of someone they don't own. And the Conservation Commission did a great job in these areas. There's still a lot of natural land in the backyards of those houses. Further along, you pass through the back of Audubon's Broadmoor Sanctuary. And since we're in church, so along here in data is the statue of the Virgin Mary. Daniel Sargent bought both sides of it. And at her feet in Latin it says, "The flower shall appear on our earth." So you end up at the South Natick Dam, beautiful spot, easy access, great place to go parking, easy access, plenty of places to park and get into there.
There was no warning with that dam?
South Natick, this one,
We almost had it over, yeah.
yeah, another one.
Well, that also has a tough portage because the sides are really steep as you're approaching the dam, right? Is that the one?
There's some spots.
Yeah.
There's a lot of, there's all the park around it, so there's always some place to get to it. And then from South Natick, you bend around the Mass Horticultural Society's Elm Bank Reservation, this lovely bridge links the reservation over to Route 16. And then you meander through Wellesley and Needham. Good. And the kids love seeing wildlife on the river. Paddling up the Charles, you see lots of blue herons. We saw one almost every day. We saw mundane stuff. Early day, here's Barry. I'm not sure who was more startled to see the big cow, Barry, or the cows. I'm sure they weren't seeing anything here for themselves. Okay, sorry about that.
I have a quote that Dad said on that day. We don't eat hamburgers.
Yeah, but they look a little angry for us to be there. There was some angry cows. The strangest sighting we saw were these two big snapping turtles hanging out. They were each probably 1.5 feet across. And these the dinosaur-looking snapping turtles hang out next to each other. And then they kept bumping into each other and circling around each other. And then there was this violent crash. And they kept banging into each other. This went on for 15 or 20 minutes. We just kept circling around it. They didn't care that we were there. And then looking back, I'm not sure whether they were fighting
Yes.
or parking, yeah. The next section is one that anybody here could do. It's easily accessible. It starts in Needham and runs down through Dedham to Nahant Park. Charles River Canoe and Kayak, who has the outlet here in Auburndale, also has a rental place up here at Nahant Park. And they will shuttle you out here to South Street in Needham and drop you off with that and like just a one-way path all the way up there. What else happens in this section? Oh, you have your first of 3 crossings of 128 down here. This is right where all the lane configuration work's going on right now. If you slow down without traffic, look over, you'll see the bridge for the Charles River and tucked down there. And down here in Dedham, you're presented with the 2 choices for traveling the Charles. There's the natural flow of the river down along here through Dedham, the long route. But there's also a shortcut. This is a few hundred years ago, the early settlers of Dedham dug a ditch, the long ditch, that just goes straight across. Although it's not very scenic. The walls are very tall and very straight. But you go the longer way, looping through Dedham, where it's much more sort of traditional, wider and scenic. You see the big heron there? Yeah, there's a big heron there. Oh, it's great. Yeah, and one of the big changes we noticed here, too, is that it was near a park. Upstream, when we saw sort of the ducks and the geese, they go away from you. When we came into this section, all of a sudden they came to us, like, do you have food?
Yeah.
Clearly we'd entered park birds instead of the more wild birds. Okay. Yeah. I don't have a picture of the ducks yet. I don't have the ducks at the I'm trying to study food. Over in that section, you can find this outlet. This is the Mother Brook bypass. If the Charles River gets to flood stage in this area, some of the water floods over this gate and goes down the man-made Mother Brook over to the Neponset River. They dug industrials that dug the Mother Brook up again in the 1700s to sort of run factories down that section. All right, so there's the canoe and kayak place down in Nahant Park, and downstream you can paddle between sort of Newton and Needham. And of course here, now you're turning northwest, you're actually turning away from the water. in this section, you also realize why Newton Upper Falls and Newton Lower Falls got their names. The Silk Mill Dam up at Upper Falls, this one can sneak up on you. There's the Central Street Bridge right there. There's a couple signs on the bridge, but if you're not paying attention, you don't hear the drop because it's so big and the noise is all down there. Again, fortunately I was paying attention, we didn't get all that close to it. It's scenic, great place to stop.
Although, Barry, didn't you have an interesting experience with that?
I did, that was at the Lower Falls Dam. That also sneaks up on me.
So just downstream from that is Echo Bridge. For those of you who've gone and sat on the platform and yelled, the echoing just on the middle of the boat is probably a little even better. What else we got here? Further down you have Horseshoe Dam. You see this one because you actually have, this is Route 9 right here, so you sort of realize you need to port it to stop something. And it's a long, nasty portage around the dam, under Route 9, and down Quinnipiac Road to get back into the river. And then further down you have these falls, which are really powerful. This is Accordingly Dam down in Newton Lower Falls.
Wasn't it when the time we came here that there was like literally water coming over the wall?
These are very impressive. This is a great place to go visit after a heavy rainstorm and see sort of the power of the river coming down here. Did you get too close to these, Barry?
As you get close, the current is really strong. And you can't turn around and get out without it sort of flipping you from a side to the other. So that was tough. And there's no way to get out unless you really just kind of put it over your shoulder and go up about 10 feet of embankment.
Well, and several years ago, so this is like behind Newton Lower Falls, that wine store there. And was it maybe 4 or 5 years ago when there was a lot of flooding and there was a kayak in a tree?
Was it right?
Like, clearly somebody had a bad day.
And after a few years ago when I came into this section, I sort of put in farther downstream from this, but it's still just sort of, it was still churning a little bit. And I flipped and fell out, and I'm panicking a little bit, and then I stood up. Because it was only a big deal. It was very entertaining for all the people who were sitting out there at lunchtime, staring at the guy flopping around. And then just down from that is Route 16 and by Lower Falls 1. And this is the top of the section you can reach from the Charles River Canoe section. Sort of up here, right, so Quarterly Falls is back here. This section, here's the Lower Falls Dam, and you can get here from the Charles River Canoe paddling upstream past the golf course. Of course, the boathouse, you can grab stuff. And then downstream to the lake section where the river's sort of flat and wide. Does anybody not paddle this section? Into Waltham. We pulled off this side. There's a nice little dock we can pull off. We pulled up, jumped into Margarita's, grabbed some tacos, and called it a day waiting for Natasha to come get us. But just downstream, so this is the birthplace of the American industrial movement. This was the site of the first power loom in the United States. Paul Moody partnered with Francis Cabot Lowell to build the machinery. Moody was a mechanical genius, and Lowell was an industrial spy who'd gone over to Britain to figure out how they worked. And he came back and had Moody design it for him and built it there. And I paddled. So I paddled many times down here in the lake section, but I've never done this section from sort of Waltham along Newton to the Watertown border. So we did. It's zippy in this section. There's not a lot of rapids, but it moves along at a very fast clip. You certainly wouldn't want to have to paddle against it trying to do a round trip. There's a small dam here. This is just behind the Shaws over on River Street in Waltham. And they've cleaned up this section. The Blue Heron Trail sort of zigs and zags alongside it, sometimes over the river down to this section. And there's a slightly bigger dam. This is near Galen Street on Route 16.
Yes, they're standing.
The geese were not impressed by the dam. And then our last section is going to be here along Stirrer Drive and through the basin. Very accessible. The CRCK also has an outlet there. They'll rent you a boat in off Soldiers Field Road. Go for another one, that's us getting ready to start this section. More traffic here, obviously you have to watch out now all of a sudden for the rowers as they go flying by. Boats. And they're going backwards so they don't see you. Hopefully the sleepy little oxen who's just sitting in the back saying rows noticing having them turn away from you. And as you come to the BU Bridge, the river really changes at this point. It's not like the rest of the river, right? At this point it's wide, free of any sort of noticeable currents. And that's part because it's not really the Charles River anymore. If you look back at an old map of Boston, you see the Charles River stops here, right about Magazine Beach. And the back bay was this sort of old marsh estuary. But it's windy, no current, you can tuck into the lagoons. Makes it a little more pleasant to get through that section. But the Charles River Basin was formed in 1908 by building a dam that I think everybody's probably been to. They built the Museum of Science up on top of the old dam. And there's a gate, used to be a functioning lock just off to this side of it. So we kept going. Went down under the Bacon Bunker Hill Bridge and came to the new dam. Over here, behind these grates, are the big pumps. What do they do? Capacity of almost 4 million gallons per minute to sort of throw the river water out in the harbor when the river starts rising. This is where I blew my whistle, yes. Right, so this was all built. The reason they got rid of the old dam is it couldn't keep up with, in part, because it would keep up with the flooding back in the 1930s where Boston flooded.
You need pumps to make the water go downhill. Yeah.
Well, but again, it's not natural, right? So you have the harbor, as we go into the locks, we weren't sure actually whether they would take us to the locks. So we were out there, as Caroline asked, we were out there sort of blow the whistle as it says to do, and nothing happened. But then a boat came up, like, okay, so we were just dealing with the traffic and they were just running through the one lock for us. It wasn't a big difference. You can see the water line. We just had to go up about a foot to get out into the harbor, which we did, out to Boston Harbor. What do you see? You see ducks. Yes, we saw ducks. And we also saw the USS Constitution. We didn't get too close. There's a sort of warning sign there about the use of force. In my little tiny red, the kayak felt very small. And then we continued off in front of the aquarium, past the Tea Party ships, past a rampaging pirate boat that really came as a surprise. Yeah, I wasn't sure what was going on there to have the boat sort of spraying water cannons in front of us as we were going there.
And Caleb saw a girl that was
Yes.
that wanted to shoot.
So-
It was clear.
So we ended up, this is a new canoe and kayak dock in Fort Point Channel that Parker Gano Gillette built. Go ahead. It's got dedicated free parking for it. Great spot for Natasha to come and pick us up. And I do want to thank Natasha who really made most of this possible, because she would drop us off upstream and come down and pick us up downstream most days that Barry wasn't able to join us. And it is much more pleasant to paddle just downstream than upstream. Go ahead. So that's the summary of our adventure, starting from way out here in Milford, down under 495, under 128 two times, through the basin and out into Boston Harbor.
Excellent.
It was about 10 days, so you can see sort of the variations in color were sort of the different days as we went through and did those sections.
And I would say, in most days, you were what, out maybe 3 hours?
3 or 4 hours. Yeah.
Except the first day, or the first section, which was 8 hours.
Yeah, that was, we were out there long enough that we were sort of concerned about like the sun was starting to set on us a little bit. But that was it with Barry, so we dropped the car off at the end. So we knew we had to get to the end because that's where our ride was.
How did you pick, the drop-off spot on any one day? Do you have a good sense of how far you
Mr. Matt, he breaks it up in about 4-hour sections or so, 3 or 4 hour sections to go through, categorize it. So I've done a couple of sections based on his, and I went with it. He's pretty good about it. It's kind of a little out of date now, particularly in the Waltham Watertown section, because that predates the Blue Heron Trail. So there's one place they said it's a terrible portage because it's like creosote lined logs or something alongside the river, but that's all cleaned up now. It's actually a much more pleasant section than we thought. It was that Waltham section was very thin veneer green, a lot of houses right on the river, there was debris, but the river moved along nicely in that section. It was more pleasant than I thought it would be. We knew this first section was going to be horrible, and it was as horrible as we expected it would be.
Did the book say it was gonna be horrible,
Yeah, and I know, Natasha works with a guy who done that section too, and he said, yeah, the early sections are really,
Yeah, every single time you mention that first section, it brings back terrible
you know, it's difficult to get through, the water quality is terrible, it was not,
in the reeds.
it's not a section I would ever go back and do again.
Yeah.
We did it because we wanted to do the whole thing, so we knew we had to do that section. And I somehow conned Barry into helping us out on that section, so just help on that.
How long does it take to get from the new Marriott put in down to Waltham, Watertown area?
To get to the Moody Street Dam from there? Oh, maybe an hour.
Oh, that's it?
It's probably an hour and a half back up because you're going against current.
Yeah.
You don't sort of notice the current too much until you're paddling against it, and it's like, oh, there's a little bit of a current.
I saw so many of these dams, and some of them looked almost manageable, like if you wanted to, you could kind of rise over. Was there any part of you that thought I could do this?
The only one we went over was was that first beaver dam. In part because it was so much, it was like a good beaver dam should be, so it made it super marshy all around us, so there was no way to sort of get out and go around it. That one we did go over, but most, no. Even that ripple on, behind the Shaws and River Street. Yeah, in part because it's hard to tell, you can't see from upstream what there is downstream. So you don't know if there's a big pile of rocks right there or what.
Even if they're easy to go over, you know, even if it's maybe a 6-foot gentle drop, there are often lines of boulders at the bottom too.
Yeah. In part, you know, the double kayak is very long as well too. So, you know, it's gonna high center on you anyhow. You know, a shorter one, you know, a shorter little stunt one, maybe you can pull it off. But the long one is gonna end up getting high center. You know, you go up and the nose get down and then I'm just sitting in the middle. And that's how you end up flooding and getting in trouble, which is, you know, part of the boat gets stuck on one side and then you're sideways and the water's flooding to the boat. And, you know, this is what happens.
Did you ever capsize with the kids on these trips?
No, we did not. We did not. We managed to stay upright.
There were some lost shoes in the mud.
Yeah, there's one section we cut out at the end of the river.
It was very muddy.
There was in the mud when I stepped out.
Yeah, we missed coming into the Dedham section. Natasha's going to pick us up, but there was miscommunication as to which bridge she was going to be at. So we ended up getting out in the construction site at 128, sort of underneath it. So they had set up hay bales to prevent sort of the mud and everything from coming down to the river. But we had to cross all that mud to get onto the road. You know, Carol lost her shoes and
There
that.
was like a sticky mixture of mud.
Just one. No, you lost both shoes. We found them.
No, a sticky mixture of mud and cement, and it's just.
There are better ways to get out from that, but we had missed all of them.
So what's next, Doug?
What's next? I think we're going to do the Concord, Assabet, Sudbury rivers next summer.
That's the end of the slideshow.
Yes, it is the slideshow. No, go back. I've heard there's some good sections of the Neponset River as well, although I'm not quite sure. I know they've been doing some work alongside that.
Is there a book?
There's no book on that one, so that's the
You're
problem.
gonna write it.
I already have the book for the Concord one, so I'm just staring at that one to go through and figure out that section. Great.
Thank you.
Great, thanks everyone for coming.